Okay, let's call our meeting, the Standing Financial Committee meeting for August 1st. We'll call it to order at 6:07. Do roll call? Mayor Laura?
He's in the parking lot. Should be in a second.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem White?
Here.
Treasurer Carroll?
Here.
Diana House is absent today. I am here.
I am here.
Jennifer Burnett? Ray Santos? John Hallowell? Sean Belingat?
Present.
Mayor
And
Laura.
alternate member Benecki.
Present.
Check him out.
Okay. Action on any requests for excuse absences. We have Diana Harris out on vacation. And I'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. Nancy?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any conflict of interest disclosures? Approvals or adjustments to the agenda? Do you have any announcements, recognition, proclamations, correspondence? None? Okay. We'll move into our public comment period. This is for any items that are not on the agenda. Any one person may address the committee on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give it to the recording secretary. There is a 3-minute limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the committee from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. Do we have speakers?
We do have a speaker.
There are no slips up there to fill out.
We just got them. They weren't on the table. Thank you, Judy.
Judy, do you want to go ahead and start?
6:10.
Judy Bingham, 115 Minnesota. I had the occasion to go to the Regional Water Quality Control Board meeting on Friday, and I don't know if any of you know it, but I'm a neighbor with the sewer plant, the illustrious Beaumont sewer plant. $520,000 was paid to Wildermuth Environmental in the last year. We've been paying that man for 20 years, and I guess he's kept us safe. I let them know that there are no audited financial statements for 3 years. The city is still forging $70 million in machinery and equipment to make the sewer worth $50 million. Now, I've given all of you that information months ago. I have in the packet the Beaumont sewer bond requisitions, all by year from 93 to 2012. $38 million we spent on that sewer. And then I get the Title 22 engineering report. And these are the things that we still have to do to even get recycled water. There are 7 of those. And again, at what cost to Beaumont taxpayers? Plus, we have the $69,500,000 desalter. That's also in your packet. Now, there's also a letter here from to Van Lant and Fankhandel. I know we haven't had a report. I noticed it wasn't on the agenda again. This was the transcript of July 5th was brought up. I mean, it's in your packet also. And so I have a real problem with this, and if you think you're going to forge those numbers and move on, no, we're not going to let it happen. We need an honest assessment of what happened, and I know what happened. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other speakers? And we will close public comment at 6:12. And the first item on our agenda is adoption of the minutes for May, this should read May 2nd instead of May 16th, and July 11th. Are there any changes or modifications that need to be done? We good? Okay. What do I do?
Need a motion to
Make a
approve.
Just a motion, right?
Can you do that?
Okay, we'll make a motion to approve the minutes for May 2nd and July 11th.
Colleen motion. I'll second.
Were there issues on one of them? Sean?
I'll have to abstain on one. I was not present at the last.
Okay, then we have to do them separately.
So you have to do each one separately
Yeah.
because we have someone abstaining.
Oh, we do?
So do the first and then we'll make
Okay.
a motion
May
on the
2nd.
second.
Okay.
So do the first one. I make a motion that we adopt the May 2nd, 2016 minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Jennifer seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Bring that one in.
Okay.
I make a motion that the July 11th, 2016 minutes are adopted.
One second.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Who seconded?
I did.
Lloyd. All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Abstaining? Any opposed? Okay. Next on our agenda is the CFD escalator review process. Are there any public comments on this item? No? We'll move into discussion on potential process and issues and potential role of SFC to assist. And who has this item?
I requested that it be put on the agenda, and it was really at the leadership of council that it come to the agenda. Specifically, Dr. Della Condon has been very interested in examining the CFD escalator, as have other council members, but she really has been doing a lot of research on this in her role as council. And the reason that I put it on was so that we could begin discussing what would be a process to review the CFD escalator. How would that be structured? What would we need to know? What kind of research would have to be done on it? And what assumptions can we make? And then what role, if any, would the Standing Financial Committee have in assisting council, since we are set up to assist council in finding out and researching and making recommendations wherever appropriate. So there's not a staff report with this, in part because this is sort of the beginning of discussion on it, and there were no conclusions or research that I had come to or that anybody had given me as of yet. So this is just the beginning of that discussion. So with that, I'd like to open it up.
I'd like to fill in some background from the council why this is in the Standing Finance Committee. There had been a couple early attempts in the last couple of years to different CFD homeowners from different CFD areas came in and requested renegotiating, dropping the 2% escalator, all of these different suggestions. And there really was no process followed. One group put in petitions and they were not granted a meeting. Another group had no petitions and they were given a rewrite of their entire CFD. So what happened earlier this year, probably a few months ago, another area in Four Seasons, came forward with 100 signatures and have asked us to drop the 2% escalator. So council decided if we do that for one group, then we should be fair and do it for other groups. But each group is different. Some CFDs, all of the CFD money has been maxed out. There are even probably some areas where there's still not, maybe it's still going through the process of that. So the idea, and we talked about this early on here, probably about 2 or 3 months ago, and the idea was that we would try and see if we could come up with a process that will be fair to anyone who comes to us. And I think we had discussions before about getting an attorney, the CFD specialist, the attorney, or our consultants that we're using for CFDs to come in and discuss it with us and answer questions. So I think that what I'd like to see done here is that we put a couple people in charge of taking this process and starting to run with it. That's what I'm hoping will come out of the discussion tonight.
Okay.
I would think first that someone needs proper CFD education in the bonds, the acceleration, what that looks like, how much that is for the average citizen, so that they could relay that information back, maybe if they had a meeting with accountants that are reviewing the bonds that are currently doing that, then we would be able to report back. And if everybody's abreast to the same information, or at least on the same understanding, then we could move forward with setting up a guideline.
It's my, I think that's good. I think that we're going to have to not only examine the process, but also try to infuse it with as much knowledge as we can on the impact of the escalator, both on the city and on the residents, because the escalator is part of the projections for income for the city, so that needs to be taken into consideration. Also, the impact that it may or may not have on being able to pay off the bond debt. So,
And that needs to be looked at, the total amortization of the bond from the day it started, where we're at, because what payment levels were assessed, what's been made to date, and where that's going to go to the future. Because my understanding is we just kind of blanketed a payment stream at the maximum amount that was allowed under the bond when it was issued, not so much
Individual.
the actual amortization out of that bond. So we need to take a look at where we are today, and then what it's going to take to pay off that bond and the remaining time on the bonds that have been issued.
Well, and each improvement area is different.
Yeah, they are.
And so
Very different.
So the process of determining that is not going to be free, and it's going to be, we're going to have to work out a process that says to the homeowners that are coming to us that if you got the right number of petitions, there's still room on your debt ratio for that to happen. It can happen, but I don't want to focus just on the escalator, because one area that came in was not trying to stop the escalator and was not trying to lower the monthly payments. All that, and that for transparency, that was my area, the area that I lived in. And what we were trying to do, we were saying we'll continue to make those high payments, and we'll continue to make those high payments with the 2% escalator. We just want our debt to be reduced faster. We wanted the city to make an agreement that they would no longer come back and issue more bonds, and because we recognize that the bondholders buy these bonds based on a revenue stream. And if you can go and try and change the 2% escalator and drop it off, but I agree with you that we need to get, Commissioner Rarick, I agree with you that we need to get education. And I think we talked earlier about bringing the experts in for us as a whole before. I mean, I think that would make more sense than just the two people. I'm just suggesting that we get 2 or 3 people to organize that process, work with the staff to get the people in here, put it on the agenda, and just run with it on that way.
Well, I'm pretty good with bonds. I wouldn't mind working on that. So,
I think it's absolutely critical that we get the experts involved, because that's the only way to start it in the right direction. And I also agree that there needs to be a clear answer for people. This sort of convoluted answers that we've given before of, petitions in one instance and, no action in another is just not enough of a service to the community, given all the concerns about the bond debt and the escalator. We've got communities that are on the escalator that are on fixed incomes or raising families, and I think that clear answers are long overdue.
Excuse me. I think that something was brought up that needs to be re-emphasized, and that is in these developments where we have set up CFDs and put up that we're going to take and issue so many bonds. One of the questions I've asked and has not been answered yet is, how much money was Solaris supposed to be paying, and what were they actually paying for? And have they actually paid all of that to the limits of what they were supposed to pay? And if so, what's all this other money floating out there for, and could that be reduced so that maybe the payments would be reduced? Because if they had an obligation that they were going to take and put in $100 million worth of improvements, all the improvements have been made, but it only costs $50 million, then why is the extra $50 million out there being collected?
And my understanding when we brought this up in council from Webb was that each area's got those issues, and there are some areas where you can't just quickly look at the debt numbers and look at the payment ratios and say, okay, we're going to do it, because there are some facilities that still haven't been built yet for those areas. And their explanation to me was someone has to look, number one, at the numbers, and number two, at what was promised to be built and what hasn't been built or what has been done. So I think that's something we need to discuss it on
and we are in the process of doing that, are we not? The audit of what has been spent for improvements on each of the improvement areas. That's in the process now.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
But that's a snapshot of what today is. 3 years from now, we should have a process in place that says, okay, your group is coming to us, here's the process, you're going to need to pay X amount of dollars to get the process started, this is what's going to happen, whatever that is. And I think that we need a process in place that will work for everyone and is fair to everyone. And that's what I think council, what we were trying to get the finance committee to do for us.
Excuse me, John, if you're going to speak, could you pull a microphone over? We're being recorded, and otherwise we don't pick you up. Thank you.
What we're doing now is we're analyzing where the money was spent.
No, what I was trying to say, Lloyd, is that if we're doing that, then in order to take and get the community more behind what the process is, the community shouldn't have to come back to the city and say, okay, what are we going to do with this? That these facilities have all been built out, and now you're still collecting money to build more facilities. The city has a good relationship to its taxpayers, should be taking and then going on their own and initiating the process of taking and reducing that.
But if the number of bonds have been issued for X amount of debt, and the payments are designed to pay that X amount of debt off, we as a council cannot just wave a wand and say, okay, you don't need to pay all of that debt. So, regardless of
that baits the thing that's always been said in the community. Where's the money at, and where's the money going to? And if you're collecting money and you have no place to spend it, then the taxpayer is going to resent the fact that they're paying for something that they're never going to get a benefit of.
Correct, and we do need to get to the bottom of that, but the way these were supposed to work The way they were designed to work, and I'm not at all saying it was the right way to do it, but the way they were designed to work was that eventually the debt would be at a level that your monthly payments are covering that debt and only the debt service. So if you have communities like Solera, and I'm speaking on top, Solera, and there's areas in Turbine Hills, Fairwood Canyon, who their debt has been issued to the max. And so if you go and drop the 2% escalator on those, or, I'm just speaking sort of hypothetically, because if you were to go and change what the bondholders expected to get on the return on their investment, then you're opening that up to a lawsuit from bondholders.
Solera is one of the few that does not have the 2% escalator.
Parts of Solera, it doesn't,
Yeah.
parts of Solera.
Right.
Right. And some of the earlier areas don't have them either.
Right.
And some areas, are in the situation where Stetson is, where there's still a lot of debt that could be issued. And should it be issued if all the, like you're saying, if all the facilities have been built, why should more debt be issued for that? And I think we are going to get to the bottom of where we are on what's been spent and that. And I'm just sort of more looking at an idea here of when a community comes to us and says, hey, I want to really, like you're saying, hey, if our facilities are all built out and you're collecting money that is more than is necessary to retire the debt that's there, we want it back. That community needs a process to go through so that we don't just treat it differently in each and every case. So that's...
So if I understand John's statement, tell me if I'm wrong or right, it's that once we understand what indebtedness we have on that, not to have a process, not for the process not to be wait for the community to come to us to ask to be reorganized, but us know what it is, go to each community and say, here's where we're at, here's what we can do, the process to be initiated from our side of the table.
Well, I take it one step further.
Is that right, John? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but the other side of the coin could be that when the final analysis is done, we said we needed a certain amount of debt, and we don't have the funds to take and pay off those projects. How are we going to collect that?
Granted, that's something that we'll find out.
Right, but
Well, there's also the thing that we have basically refinanced a lot of the bonds also. So looking at what the payment stream is from the day it was refinanced till it's paid off at the end of the amortization schedule is really important to figure out, for instance, Solera, if we've got 20 bonds that have been sold under a $10 million number, if some of those numbers have been reduced in their interest rates and the the required payment is now lower,
Right.
where does that money go? Does it go back to retire the debt,
Well, see,
or do we reduce it for the homeowners?
One of the problems is that I don't think people fully understand what Alan Kapanik is doing to Beaumont. Okay, Beaumont is the only city that of all these experts we've asked who've created a single CFD.
Right.
So to take money from Solera and build the facilities that are in Solera and take the rest of the money to put over on facilities over here is completely allowable in the way the CFDs were set up. So it doesn't really matter whether all of Solera's facilities have been built if the money's already been gathered for facilities over here.
If
Now
that is true and that's legal, then why couldn't we take a utilitarian approach to the bonds? If it is true that we can...
Because each bond area has a separate issuance of bonds, and each bonds in those areas have obligations with the bondholders.
But I mean, if you address the individual obligations and the debt ratios, if they're all commingled, couldn't we, if we're pulling all of our money together, even though they're individual bonds, and we're making that assessed payment as a city,
Talking
why
about
couldn't...
leveling the debt for everyone?
Yes.
But what you got to understand is, the way I understand it, is that it is allowable to take money from this improvement area to pay for that improvement for facility projects over there. It is not allowable to pool the money.
So it's allowable to take money to improve,
To improve other areas.
but not to satisfy debt for
Can't
another
pool
community.
money.
I think
Because all the bonds have debt. But these are the questions we need to be asking.
Yeah.
So not me.
Milana has a point she'd like to make to help with this.
Yes. One of the things that we've already taken into consideration is that we have to get all of the different bond funds squared away and know exactly what we have and what we need for the future. So we know what the bonds should have been issued for. We can then find out how much was issued. We can find out what it is that was supposed to be built and figure out what hasn't been built. Put all those numbers side by side to see where we stand. But before we can take into consideration any changes to the bond repayment or the assessments of the different homeowners, once we figure all of that out, we then have to do some cash projections and forecasts to see what happens on a go-forward basis, to see if we have the funds in order to make the bond debt payments. There are a lot of balloon payments that are built into these schedules. So this is going to take a lot of time because, of course, every schedule is completely different. We have to make sure that the monies that were assessed for Improvement Area 8C, that those have been spent specifically on 8C and that no one else has used it, and that those funds are what are available on a cash projection basis to make the 8C bond debt payments. So between Webb Associates and myself, we're trying to do the assessment side. What should have been collected, what did we actually get, how does that break apart to see how that works, then what was matured each year, what are the interest payments each year, and just to see the cash flow on the debt side. From the bonds issued side, then we have Richard Wall also working with Richard and with Almer to find out what was built and what hasn't been built, and if there are construction funds still available to build. If those funds are necessary, are they sufficient? If they're not sufficient, then what are we going to do about that? So there are a lot of questions, and we have to do every single step one at a time, and we have to do it improvement area by improvement area. So it's going to take a lot of time before we can even come up with a process for the homeowners. But by the time we get through all of that, we should have a good idea if we have a problem area or if we have a surplus area where we can start a discussion. But it's going to take a lot of time. There are a lot of moving parts.
Right.
But I think tonight we're probably wasting our time, because I think what we need to do, the reason I like this brought back up is that I like the idea of putting a couple people in charge. It shows up on every agenda. We get a status update on a monthly basis from staff. We schedule a meeting for Webb and Associates to come in, for Armour to come in.
Absolutely.
We keep this alive.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you for something that I asked the previous administration never got, and I think people need to really understand this. You brought it up.
Yes.
If you look at the balloon payments from 2035 to 2040, when most of these bonds all balloon up, you will be surprised at the amount of debt payments. That's why the 2% escalator is built in the way it is, because some of these bonds have $10, $12 million due in those years.
Right.
And when you start adding all the bonds up, you're looking at some numbers that are just overwhelming.
They're very large. One of the things I do have a schedule showing the maturities. What I'm trying to do now is verify that it's correct. And
You have a
it's,
schedule for each bond issue.
yes.
But I want to see,
Oh, no, I have it in total. I have it individually and in total, but I need to make sure that my numbers are accurate, which is something I'm working on right now. As soon as I have that complete, I will be sharing it. And I would have shared it sooner, but I want to be sure the numbers are correct. And the balloon payments start earlier than that.
oh, I know, I'm just saying they
Okay.
get really big then.
Yes, they do.
They start early, and then they start just
Right.
really climbing.
Right. There's a few that actually start with larger payments and go down, but that is not the majority of the bonds. Most of them have small payments up front, then they may even skip a few years, and then whack, you have another gigantic principal payment due. So they're all structured a little differently, and
So we
yeah.
need to get I think we're working as a city very well to get the management of that side done.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to be able to be more responsive to communities who come and say, okay, you know, what are you going to do about my area?
Right.
So we need to put this as a continuing item for the Standing Financial Committee so that we get updates and we treat it from our end like a project that we need to be involved in and monitor. And should we assign, I'm unclear, if we assign a couple of people, what are they going to do until you've done your work?
I'm not
It's
sure
not
what they
like
could
said, it
do. I'm trying to finalize the figures right now for fiscal 15, just the activity in fiscal 15, so that then I can move forward and do 16. And then we just slowly have to make our way backwards in time to the beginning. But it's going to be time-consuming, and it really, my part, as far as the debt payments and the assessments coming in, is really hinging on work that Richard Wall is doing at Webb and Associates and myself in order to make sure that we get all the information, and then that works out to what the county has already told us. I'm trying to make sure from all different angles that we're as accurate as we can be.
But I'd like to pick up where Elaine said she's got some expertise in this area. She'd be more than willing to, and I'd be more than willing to join.
Yeah, I would
Do
be.
it now.
I think it would be, I think if you have people who are assigned this responsibility, that we're going to get it moving forward, and it's not going to get let slide. And for the small tour, just like you're doing with state controllers and checklist, you're meeting with staff on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, I would mind helping you delve into that. That would be, I might have some background and help for you.
Well, first I need schedules from Richard Wall, then I have to get schedules from the county. I have to match it up to what's in the general ledger and do all the allocations. What I can do is, as I get a year of activity summarized, I could have you review it, but I don't know how you could do it for me.
No, it would be more the data behind putting in schedules of the actual bonds that were, the bond approval itself, and then each of the bonds that have been issued under that. A lot of that I've already gotten done. So that I could help with.
Well, the way that Richard and I have been working through it is by the improvement areas, and we have it all segregated that way. We just have to now do the assessment side.
To see what was actually built out.
Well, that's what staff has to do for one side, but the other side is what assessments were made to the homeowners, so what did the city receive, and then how did the city handle it, where did it go, and how much then remains that should be left in this fund versus that fund. Do we have cushions, do we not have cushions, what's the cash projections all moving forward? Like I said, there's a lot of moving pieces, and none of it's, at least from what I can tell, has ever been put together into a cohesive report. And fiscal 15 is the first year I'm trying to put together. So,
This is what we were talking about, correct?
yes.
This is exactly the issue we were talking
Right.
about, and where you're going to meet with Richard, and it actually, some of those other documents that we discussed where we have the maturity schedule, et cetera, they
Right.
all kind of fit together
Right.
in one complete project.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion until you get more work done with Richard, that maybe we assign a staff report that gets design that gets presented in this meeting on an update, and maybe Elaine could do that so we don't add work to you.
Right.
And she could just get the information on how the project's moving ahead, and then that might also give her some ground to
Right.
go ahead and start to help us with the process.
Right.
But I would like to have a little more discussion here, because I, as a council member, we had a community come into us with a petition signed by 100 homeowners. We want to do this, and we've punted to the finance committee. And I don't know that anything that staff has to do prevents us from starting to consider processes to reach out. We don't need to wait until they're done to reach out to Webb and Associates and find out what the cost of the analysis would be, because they've told us in council how much it would cost to do to prepay off an individual, what the process would cost them to do it. And I just think that I don't want, people coming to me from that community in Four Seasons and say, what's happened? And put in a petition, you guys are just ignoring it. I want to see some movement.
I agree to a point, but I think Nancy raises a good point. I just don't think we're far enough along in the process yet, and what you don't want, at least what I don't want to do, is start and then stop and start and stop while we gather information to put together a program. I think maybe we do get the reports back from Milana, and then Milana says, okay, I think we have enough information to move forward with, and then at that point, we get two folks from this group to to put something together. I just want to make sure there's enough information there so that we don't lose steam and have to start and stop again. That's.
Well, I would say this, I don't know that we would start and stop. I don't think that assigning people right now would negate any of the work that staff is currently doing. And I think Lloyd's right in that we don't need to wait to know what the answers are to start to flesh out what the process might be. So I would say that we go ahead and assign some people to it. Those people can get whatever information staff has to date just for review, knowing that it's not final, and get started.
In my work, we call these people product experts. And if we had 2 or 3 people on this committee, other than me trying to tell you what I know, product experts in CFDs, and what Milan is going through, and what Webb & Associates is going to need, I think that we could benefit by that. And again, I don't think that we're expecting a process to come out in the next month or 2 months if we're not ready to.
Well, I think I suggested that Elaine can begin to sketch out a pro forma process or the beginning of a process as part of it. I know from talking with, I agree with you. I do not think that it needs to wait. I don't think it's fair to the community for us to not go ahead and start to structure potential ways for the escalator issue to be addressed in a uniform way. So we don't say one thing to one person, another thing to another person, and then nothing to the third person. So I think that it's really good to, and I think as part of her initial work with Milana, that process may start to flesh out some ideas from it. I just know from talking with Milana that she is so stretched thin right now that I don't want to add another committee to her. We're going to have the committee do the SEO checklist, and she needs to fill in an awful lot of that data because it all falls down pretty much around her ears. And she's going to have to do that a lot in addition to everything else that she's doing. So I'm just concerned about giving her another committee at this point of even 2 or 3 people. If there's one liaison who talks to Milana and starts to suck the information from her as it moves along and then starts to flesh it out for discussion here, then I see that as much less of a burden to staff, and I see it as effective a process as we could probably expect for right now. And I think it also makes us move ahead on having good answers for people who want to know that we're working on a process for the escalator.
And I can also provide, because in the next few days I have to finish fiscal 15 somehow, I can provide a draft of that to any number of the members of this committee so they can see, at least on the financial accounting side, what all's involved in that. And they can see from that standpoint then maybe how to move forward with a process for the public.
Well, again, I'm going to reiterate my position that I'd be more than willing to help, and if there's a committee that's formed or a person assigned, I want to be part of that committee. And if there's a motion, I want to be included in that motion and part of that committee.
And I think 2 heads are better than 1. And I don't know how 2 people doing this is going to have more demand on a body's time than 1 person if they're working together. But I still don't have an answer to tell those people from 4C.
Well, you won't.
We're looking into it. Maybe 2 months.
And we don't have the information to base a decision on yet either, so it's difficult.
I think it's kind of the same.
Let's hold off for a
Right.
minute. You're talking about developing a process. Obviously, we have a process now that's not working, okay? It's causing more problems than it is. So you're looking to develop a process that the Four Seasons people, Tuckwood Canyon, whoever, gets a burr wherever and decides to see if they can save some money. It's a good thing to save money, right? We all want to save money. But there's got to be a process to follow because things become chaotic. And I don't know how many special districts we have. Dozen? 24? 36? How many do we have? I mean, conceivably,
30 plus.
if we have 30 plus, we could have 30 plus people filing an application to have something done. Correct, right?
Good.
And all those 30 people would get nothing done because you don't have the information that would analyze what could be done.
Right.
But you know,
Okay, so, well, I'm going to get to my point here real quick. I still believe there needs to be a process. Obviously, the one we have doesn't work. So I think it's a good idea to get somebody to look at developing that process. So if District 31 and District 5 decide to do something, they go through the same process. Okay, that's number one. I think we can run that simultaneously with what you're doing and trying to getting all that information. You don't need to be impacted much if some of our group here looks at what currently is existing, how we can define a new process that will hopefully fit all districts, all people will have, and I think the council would like to see that. At least that's what I'm hearing you say. I think we can do that simultaneously. But the bottom line is, you're not going to be able to satisfy the public until you can tell them something. And it's going to be different in each situation. It's not going to be the same. There are a lot of differences in what's happening and where the deficits are. I don't know that much about bonds. I'd like to go take a bond 101 class or something like that.
that's what we're going to have.
Because it's very
complicated.
Very complicated. And the general public doesn't see that. They don't want to know about that.
Right.
All they want to know is, could I save a few dollars if I get, they don't even know what a 2% escalator is. I can tell you that right now. Now, some people do. Some people have educated themselves, and bravo for them. They should do that.
But you know, whatever process we come up with has to meet state law. And if you look at the bond ordinances, state law, it has, and this is what I followed when I got Stetson's petition signed, there is a laid out process that the state puts up, and the state says you have to have 25% of the homeowners have to sign a petition, that you then submit that petition to the governing body. The governing body has X amount of days to respond, and then they do or do not have to hold a meeting. I mean, that is all written in state law, and we can start from there. But other than me, I don't know who else has looked at what the state law says you can and cannot do. It is very flexible, gives a lot of power to the governing authority, but that kind of research and that kind of preparation has nothing to do with what staff's doing.
Well, Dr. Condon, as her research into the escalator and the CFD, she's done a great deal of groundwork already. Would it make sense to have Elaine work with Dr. Condon to minimize the impact on staff?
No, Dr. Condon is not on the Finance Committee. This is a Finance Committee job. I don't know why it's so hard to get 2 or 3 people.
I think it would.
I'd like to take and maybe put this back on center. I'd like to make a motion that the chairman appoint a committee. We already have 2 volunteers that would like to serve on that committee, and that the committee take and meet and discuss and start the development of a plan.
John, would you be interested in that?
No, I don't have the expertise in it, and I get more confused every time Lloyd says something about this.
Lloyd, you second? Did you second?
I second that, yes.
Anybody opposed?
I think we need to find out who else on the committee too is interested.
Does anybody else have bond experience?
I do.
I'd be happy to work with you on it.
So you got
I'd like to, I brought this up at the checklist, and I'm sure I'm going to get shot down again, but I'd like to get more new people working on it.
Why?
You know? Why?
Do you want it efficient, or do you want new faces? Which is
I want new
critical.
faces.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know why it would be deemed inefficient.
I don't
just
either.
Well, that's for the committee to decide.
Does anyone else want to volunteer with Elaine and Sean?
Ray, are you interested?
I'll be tied up. I'll meet you guys.
What do we
We could always put the one who's not here on it.
Okay, so who do we have volunteering?
So far, Halliwell did a motion.
I think we should go with the
Lloyd
two-person committee at this
seconded.
point.
I think so.
They're
I
not
think
gonna be
that's
voting on
more than
anything.
enough right now.
And we have not appointed 2 official people yet.
I think if the state law is 90% of your policy, then the committee's not going to have heck of a lot to do.
Well,
We're gonna look at that 10%.
but as I started to say, state law gives a lot of flexibility to the governing body.
Well, to the decision makers, right?
Well, I mean, as I said, it was not against state law to tell Stetson to go pound sand.
Right.
But do we as Beaumont want to tell people, sorry, you followed all the process state says you can do, and you go pound sand, but these guys over here, we can get a little more money out of them, we're going to work with these guys. And that's what happened in Four Seasons in Stetson. That's what happened. Stetson was told to go pound sand. Four Seasons says, look, the city can get another $10 million, I think.
Well, I don't think that we can arbitrarily allow, just because we don't have the numbers, to be able to say, okay, we're going to waive the 2% or we're going to charge you X amount of dollars, right? We can't do that. So,
No, but I think if the two of you were to get up to speed as experts on what the state law says, we have a starting point.
okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor.
It's treasurer's on the committee, or is it two-person?
I'd like to amend that motion, if you're agreeable to it.
We don't have a second yet, I don't.
I second.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna
Lloyd
pull my
second.
And I'd like to amend the motion and have the motion state that Elaine and Sean will serve on the two-person committee. If you're agreeable to that amendment.
Gets the same thing done.
Okay. Then I will second that.
Anybody opposed?
Any opposition? Okay, we're good. Sean? Okay.
Sean and Elaine are on a CFD subcommittee
Okay, now,
or escalator?
It's a process. I don't think
process.
you should focus on escalator. It's a process for how...
A process for review of property taxes,
CFDs.
CFDs.
Elaine's still
Okay.
going to be the point person?
So an application process.
I think Elaine and Sean can work
It can
that
be both.
Yeah, I would
Just
defer.
let me know what, if anything, you want from me as far as how my side works into it, but otherwise,
And I'll email you guys the section of the numbers where the code is, because I still have it.
Is it possible to still be CC'd on the data for the bonds, even though I'm not in the committee? Yeah,
I don't see why not.
just a copy.
Everybody could be
I'd like to have
brought along.
knowledge on the bonds and their payoff and any of the information that everyone else is getting. I'd
And
like
I'm
to
not,
know.
I'm not suggesting that we don't have the updates that you talked about, an ongoing report.
She had, Nancy made a motion for a staff report at each meeting, and that did not get a second. So
I'm
we had a
not
motion
sure.
out for just the staff
make a
reports
motion for
regarding
I
the
did.
CFD.
I did.
Do we have a second on the
There was-
motion for the...
We continued discussing with the motion on the floor.
Okay.
I will second, because I think a staff report's important.
Yeah,
I do. I will second that.
Anybody opposed to a staff report? Okay. There we go.
And when are we going to get this bond 101?
You guys are going to work with staff, I think,
To be announced.
to get Webb out here, to get Ryan Forbath to come and talk. The people we're paying to help us navigate through this.
So our committee, our newly established committee will take charge of
That's
this.
what I
All
was
getting
hoping.
educated on the bond, or just you
Well, make
two?
sure they know what they're supposed to do.
Obviously, working through Milan and Richard on
I
this.
want to know this. I need to know. Okay.
Okay. Anything else on the CFD escalator review process? Okay, let's move on to the treasurer summary. Do we have any public comment? Okay, move on to treasurer summary.
The name change, just, I wanted the committee to know it'll be effective on August 20th because of the period of time that it needs to be established, the waiting period after the name change. So the next meeting, the documents will reflect the adaptation of the name change. The workshop on sustainability, the date has been set for that. That's a combined workshop between the Economic Development Committee and the Standing Financial Committee on the Sustainability Plan. And we are going to have Urban Futures in to talk about that. And that is set for Thursday, the 11th of August.
The 11th,
Correct.
and what time?
I believe it's 6 PM, but I will
Okay.
double check. Actually, you're about to get an email from the deputy city clerk
Okay.
with the time.
Okay.
it may even have gone out just before this meeting.
Okay.
The investment policy application for certification by the CMTA, I tabled that for the next meeting just because of the volume of what was on the schedule tonight. And also, the city manager has the financial policies included as part of the items that he wanted brought up tonight. So it seemed to make sense to put that ahead. The quarterly update to council on cash will be tomorrow evening. So I encourage you all to either attend or else make sure you listen to the podcast on that. The bank reconciliations are currently up till April, so we're just a couple of months behind on that, and part of that is that we still need some numbers in order to be able to catch up the last 2 months. So that's a priority by staff, but they are still down one full finance person on the team, and so it's very difficult for them to keep up with meeting with the auditors and doing all of the pieces and not having anything sort of bump off the table temporarily. So we're a little bit behind on that, but it's being addressed as a real priority, so I suspect we'll catch up on that pretty quickly. Recruitment is now closed for the finance position that was advertised, so I don't know how many applications that we did get, but they're going to get reviewed, and then we'll be moving ahead on those. So I'm just updating you on what's going on the finance end in the city. The auditors are still working on the audit, and they need some numbers also from Urban Futures, and they need some numbers and adjustments that need to be done to the general ledger. So it's still moving ahead. It's just not a slam dunk that it gets done as quickly as an audit process is done in other cities. So that's our difficulty. But we are still moving ahead with that. And the auditors were in last week. So that's very current. So that's my update. Thank you.
And did you say the city manager policy we were going to move to next meeting also?
No, just the
Investment.
CMTA investment piece that we were going to talk about.
So are we having a presentation by our city manager?
I think he left.
He left.
His documents are still here, so.
He's still here.
I think he
Okay.
doesn't know we're sort of getting up to his point.
Why don't we, can
can
we
do
move ahead to the SCO checklist discussion? Okay, any public comment on the SCO checklist discussion? Okay, let's move ahead on that.
Thank you. The subgroup of the Standing Financial Committee has met multiple times, and Jennifer has been the real backbone of getting our checklist updated. And what we bring to you tonight is the format that we'd like to discuss and maybe get a recommendation or get a vote on, so that we can go ahead and use this as a format for all of the other findings. We've populated it with only finding one, so that we could discuss it most efficiently tonight, and then maybe learn from any adjustments that you want to make for going forward. But with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion.
I reviewed it, and, it looks good. It looks a lot better than it did in terms of bringing everything into focus instead of having it shotgun all over the documents. The one thing I thought might, it's supposed to be a checklist, and normally in a checklist you put a completion, it's completed. And nowhere, I saw where some signatures are required and stuff, but I never saw something that said it was completed on X date or whatever. I mean, I don't know if that's important, but I think we have a checklist, so we should have something that says completed. After that checklist, after the process has gone through and people have developed whatever they're going to develop, there should be something that says
Completely?
Completion date.
I think it's a good point. We discussed whether to put in a completion date on the columns, and it sort of ended up that we didn't really have the time to put it in on this, correct? Didn't we do this on the last?
Our thought process, my understanding was that once it was verified and signed by the two parties, that was the completion. The moment that the city manager and either whoever we deem responsible, a treasurer, council member, a subcommittee member, once it's signed by those two parties, that is verifying that the task is complete. Because it has to be a point of three verification, whoever's completing it, and then the subcommittee, and that third person to verify, so that we're kind of self-auditing our auditor, and no one person is saying, yeah, I completed it, it's done. But we didn't put completion. We could put verified, two parties, completion date, and then we know that that's complete. Does that work?
Because if I'm the general public, I don't know the reason, the rationale
Okay.
that gone behind, that went behind the decision
Okay.
to put two signatures. All I
can
want to
do
see
that.
is,
Is it completed?
yeah,
Got it. Okay.
so.
Well, I don't know necessarily you have to do that on every one of them, because the thing is that you're going through a living process to complete the complete package. And as you go through that package, you may end up going back and changing something.
Oh, you absolutely will.
So,
Well, then that becomes the new item on the document.
John?
And that would run its
maybe
course.
use the mic.
That would run its course just like.
Some of them
the
also
original.
are violations, or not violations, they're findings, but they're more like a feeling. Did upper management have a positive attitude? Those are kind of hard to make tangible and say, yes, I verified everybody in here is having a super day. Those kind of things. And there really are literally in the appendix several statements like that are about general cultural feelings that the SEO got by being in the presence of employees. So
Is there a way we could
those are hard to.
delineate those into maybe a little addendum to the checklist? You're calling it a checklist. If you put everything there, it should be checked off. Maybe there's a way to put it as an addendum to the document that would say that it's reviewed and studied and signed off on or whatever, but not necessarily completed, because obviously you can't complete the ceiling thing.
What if we just put in a signature date next to the
Initials.
signature? So a date when
Yeah,
we
that's
record.
what he was saying. He wanted
Yeah.
the completion, a date next to the verified signature. Yeah.
And that way, if it's a
That's the last time
positive
we reviewed
attitude,
it.
we
Yeah.
have a date for a very positive attitude.
Yes.
Could there be another alternative? Change the name of the document so that the checklist doesn't appear as checklist.
Findings, SEO. Our response as a city?
Response tracking or
I like response
just response,
tracking.
because it's not really, I don't want to confuse it with our written response that we did. For
Yeah,
every
'cause we've already
finding, we
done
then
that.
had a written response. So I don't want the public to get confused with using the response word for that and then using it for this
I like
matrix
response
that's designed to track.
Tracking.
Well, you're right, though. We have responded to this report, and this is actually a checklist to determine if we are following through on what the report suggested we do to make ourselves more financially accountable to the public.
And this is just, it's really designed because there's no process for breaking it down into manageable responsibilities and items so that we can't flesh it out. So we're required to do oversight on making sure that these things are addressed. But if you don't flesh it out, you can't have any oversight. So this was a bridge to get at oversight. So I think
like
it's...
that term, oversight.
Yeah. And it also,
Oversight and compliance review
Progress
checklist.
report. I think it's a progress report towards the
Progress.
Yeah, you could adopt that. Progress.
Compliance progress
Somebody make a motion on a name they like, then. And we are going to put in, is it a motion to put in the signature date? Because if not, I'll formally make that as a motion to make sure that we get that in there.
I didn't know if we had to make a
And then
motion to
we can
change
move
it.
on to
It's
the
fine.
name.
No, we're
I don't
good.
think we need to make,
So
Okay,
we're just
then
going to
just
change
put
the
it-
signature date.
All right,
Got it?
are you changing the name?
I move that we call it the SCO checklist progress report.
Lloyd SCO progress.
So that checklist.
You stuck checklist in there anyways.
You sure you don't want to add oversight to it, or?
You can drop checklist if you want.
I like it.
Okay. SEO progress report?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine with me.
Do we have a
I'll second.
second? Okay,
I'll second.
Laura?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So I have a question for the committee. What do you want to do with this in terms of actually using it to do oversight? Do you want every time we meet every month for an update to be posted? We need to decide what we're going to do with it beyond just doing this and saying this looks good.
I think a report from the subcommittee on what has been updated or signed off since last time we met would be all I need.
Milana, do you have any thoughts on, because you are going to have to do a lot of answers on this.
Well, I am. I will have to do the documentation itself so that the committee knows what it is we've got in place or what we've done or not done. But for verification, then is the subcommittee going to come in and do a verification with staff, or I'm just not sure what the process is going to be, and if we should schedule something. And I mean, we are short-staffed and we are having a hard time keeping up with everything that needs to be done. But I also know this needs to be done as well. So I'm not sure what kind of process we should have in place on our side so that we're available when that needs to be done.
You think like maybe a once a month?
I was just going to say a
because according to the
bi-weekly or a once-a-month
Yeah.
meeting.
Because according to the SEO, we're supposed to be meeting with the city manager, with the staff. That's in there as a
Right.
separate independent from using the standing financial committee to verify what you're telling us is really what we're seeing happen, and then the second signature.
Understanding that they're pretty busy now, I don't know if you really need a monthly, quarterly might do.
Well, I think with the volume level that's on here, I think monthly is more than appropriate.
Right, because this is only finding number one. There's a lot more to be
This is
filled
just
in.
number one, and we've got how many more?
Kind of a sneak
Until you get ahead of it, then maybe monthly.
Maybe monthly, and then we back out because some of them, 3 or 4 of them we can verify are already being completed
Right.
or we're in the process of, but some of them even have legal involved and where we need to have them reviewed.
And there's quite a few that are repetitive, so once we've answered one, we may have actually answered 12. So I just wasn't sure, process-wise, if we want to set up either every other week or once a month, where we
I'd be
then meet
okay
with...
once a month, maybe the third week of the
Third
month,
week.
and that'll give us enough
Third
time to update it before
For the next
the committee
Okay.
meets.
committee meeting.
You know, we want it to,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we want it to be able to keep it timely for the committee
Right.
without burdening you. So if we do that on approximately the third week, of like the third Thursday of every month, let's say. Or maybe we got to do it earlier than that to make sure we get the packet ready. We'll talk.
Okay, yeah, as
All right.
long as it's
We'll
not
establish a
Monday or
date with that.
Tuesday, only timing issue with that is that every other week we have payroll, and Monday and Tuesday are very hectic, just
Right.
in general, so
Yeah,
those are Monday,
whatever's
Tuesday.
convenient.
So I make a motion that or get agreement or put it out to the floor, however you want to put that, that we, the committee meet with Milana approximately the third week. We'll figure out the day of every month so that we can get updates, and then we can update it for the committee.
I'll second.
Yeah, I would say on the updates, you don't need to bring us the whole working document, just bring us the updates. Because you're going to be updating whoever's responsible for updating the website.
It's going to be a ton.
We'll be updating the website, so just bring us what's been accomplished. I mean, it could be a one-page thing saying these items were dealt with and verified and whatever.
I think what we'd have to decide is do we want to have the subcommittee make the decision that it's now ready to be uploaded and just let them go with it, or do we want it to come back to the committee for discussion prior to that?
I think we just let staff continue to just work on a working document online.
I believe also I heard there was a concern of some of the data being released to public that was private, or that was an issue, or could be an issue for, I'm not saying this correctly, for the town. There's some data in here, in these reports, that
We need to tread lightly
There
on
you
some
go.
of them.
Okay.
Right, so some I think maybe
There you
should
go.
be discussed with the committee before we respond to some of them. We can identify those as we go along, if there's some that have.
Again, there's
We're
legal,
not talking about the checklist?
we are talking about the checklist.
Yes.
There are findings, and there's legal ramifications, and even up to admissions of incrimination inside the findings. We need to tread lightly in how we're responding and publicly addressing things, and then we have responsibility if in these findings, we find findings to disclose certain information to other entities. There's a lot of, am I making any sense?
Yeah, but I think you're going into an area that we don't need to go into.
Only
It does on the report.
if we find
Came
some
from Beaumont.
items that have a ramification outside of the norm, something that has some other consideration, then yes, we need to not have that
I'm
published.
misunderstanding. I thought the way the checklist worked says, this is the issue,
Yes.
have you solved it? This is how we solved it, checked and signed. What report are we talking about that would be confidential that this group could see that the rest of the community cannot?
I don't think she was implying that that was the situation. I think she was just concerned that if we ended up putting data in some way that did a liability for the town. But she just brought up a concern. She wasn't making a conclusion for anybody.
Right.
She was just asking.
So if
there's a
something does
concern.
come up where there's some questionability, then that's something that would come to the committee to discuss before we made that
I
public.
brought that up because we were talking about just posting it
Right.
ourselves whenever
Right.
we felt it was updated.
Well, I
That's-
think the checklist would then say, your next task that's going to be coming up would be like meet with legal or whatever, correct?
Right.
So you're not going to,
That's
it's not
consideration.
going to go up on the website until it's been signed off.
But we don't have closed sessions here.
No.
Everything's on YouTube. So anything we discuss, so if we're not supposed to discuss it, or the information that you have to verify that you've done it, we need to trust staff on that. And
Right, so it wouldn't be, we're not putting it up there until it's signed off. It wouldn't be signed off until those issues are resolved.
they wouldn't resolve those issues.
In essence, that's what she was saying,
Right.
was that she would want to be able to take direction on from staff on whether something was opening up the city on liability and that it had to be discussed with the attorney or anything like that.
Right.
She just didn't, and
I just
correct me if I'm
did- yeah,
wrong, she just didn't want to be the one that posted an update in a wrong manner that exposed the city. That
Right.
was
I
Right.
think
We have to be sure that it's
That was a better
accurate.
way of saying it.
information.
I don't think staff would do that.
I think we're talking about hypotheticals at this point, which are beyond the scope of any conversation that we can have at this point until we know what the hypotheticals are.
Right.
And any issue that is being reviewed at this point and discussed is already out in the public venue.
And
I think that's a good point, but I want to make one thing clear, that this is a committee that's of citizens, and they don't necessarily have deep experience in being an in-between on communication in any way, shape, or form with the city. So if they, in good faith, express a concern to make sure that they don't do something wrong, then I would like to make sure, at least on my part, that I take it as a really good concern of a very conscientious volunteer. And I don't think anybody is trying to do anything
But
that's wrong.
Now you're suggesting that if someone does say or do something inappropriate, you're personally liable. And we don't have insurance for the 9 of us on this commission. And so if it's an issue that is raised to that level, staff will take it upon themselves to bring it to a closed session of council and say, here's what needs, they don't bring it to the finance committee.
But Jennifer, did your issue come from your statement about posting something yourself?
Well, I think what would happen at
Concerned
that
of
point
And
is
are we
if
as-
they bring it to council and
are
then...
we somehow posting information as committee members?
Well, we
shouldn't
post
be.
agendas and minutes to the deputy clerk to be posted.
Right, so
That
you're
doesn't
giving it
mean-
to staff.
But it's to
Staff
the
is
deputy clerk, so it doesn't mean that she reviews everything and knows, in all the checklists what's being posted. She's going to post what's already been given to her to post. So there is just information in here about accounting, about accounts, about what the city's doing and how they're doing it. And I know we do have other, and I'm not a council member, but we do have other, ongoing cases and things going on. So I just want to make sure that if we're posting information to the community, that we're not hurting the city in any way based on our personal assessment of a finding or putting something out there that's not 100% correct and causing bad publicity or giving out bad information. It should be reviewed, and if it's reviewed by our CPA or legal and it's okay to be posted, I feel more comfortable posting it than just me personally saying, oh, hey, Deputy Clerk, here, this is where we're at.
I just don't think
That's
it
all.
should ever come to anyone on this committee, period. That kind of stuff would be stopped at the staff, and staff would say, we can't post it, but we can let closed session council know what's going on.
Yeah, what you're going to get from them basically is the sign off. This is what we've completed. If there's any kind of legal, whatever you're talking about, you won't get it. I'll tell you right now, you won't get it.
We may have to,
First.
as we come through the checklist, if we have issues like that, maybe we will make that line gray or something so that, or make the response very generic and know that that was one that it has other pieces to it that have to be considered separately or something.
Yeah,
But
I
we can
think we
wait
should
until we
just-
come across those. I don't think there'll be a lot of them, but there could potentially be 2 or 3.
I think that we should just be conscientious and confer with you and really take your advice to heart if you have a concern and just proceed and see what happens. I don't think that we can anticipate everything that's going to happen.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it would go to council, and if council wanted us to review it, I think you would shoot it back here, right? So I think we would be okay on that.
Okay.
But point well taken, Jennifer. Thank
It
you.
was just brought to my attention, so I thought I would address it, that's all.
Okay. Okay, are we good on the SCO?
I believe so, unless anybody has anything else to add to it.
Is there any other comments regarding the checklist format, additional columns?
I'd like to thank the committee personally.
I think it's
As a
beautiful.
citizen, because I know a lot of work went into that.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. Jennifer did.
Okay. Let's see, we are ready for our city manager policy review. Do we have any public comment on this? No? Okay, let's go ahead and move forward.
Members of the committee, members of the public, every city needs to have a set of financial policies. And there's really 2 levels of these policies. The first level is the overall policies of the city council as it deals with these 5 particular areas. And then within our own department, we will have a set of policies and procedures that relate specifically to things like cash receipts, accounts payable, accounts receivable, some of the day-to-day operations on how things are handled. And so in the budget document, for your review and for the City Council's review and the public's review, we prepared a set of policies which we would like to get your input on because we certainly want to make this part of the city government and how we do business. It's also important because many of the state controllers issues that they brought up relate back to policies and how we handle it. So now, when the city council adopted the budget document, because this was in it, technically it was adopted by the city council, but out of respect for the role of this committee, and I certainly don't want to disrespect this committee or in any way go around this committee, we're bringing it back. So if you have any amendments, if you have things that you think need to be changed, we certainly want to have that conversation and that discussion. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at these, and if anybody has any particular question on these policies, please let us know. We would like affirmative vote, to move these things forward as soon as possible, because they're important for the operation of the city, and it's important as other entities look at us, whether it's a state controller or our auditors or anything else, that we have these policies in place. So we're here to answer questions, take input.
I just had one. It's a general question in terms of format. Under accounting policies, you start out by saying accounting standards, and that's all good. But then under financial management, you have background, financial policy objectives, and then under investment policy, you have introduction, scope. Then under fixed assets, you have introduction, purpose. So in two sections, you have introduction, purpose, and then others you have introduction, scope, and you have background and financial policy objectives. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but it seems to me I personally like the format where you have an introduction, and then you have a purpose, and then you go into, the meat of it, so to speak.
Yeah,
it's more of a format thing, and maybe I'm way out left field.
Well, it's because each one of it, focuses in on something different. Some of them, but if you want me to add a section on purpose on each one of them, I'm happy to do it. I don't have a problem with that. If you want me to format that, and
I don't want to be nitpicky about this, but I was reading it and I thought, well, okay, that's nice, and then I go to the next section and it had a completely kind of different introduction. And really, you're talking about policies, so all of them should have some kind of a purpose. Some of them should always have some objectives to them, and then you have the meat of it, which says you get to these objectives by doing X, Y, and Z, or, you have policies that set up these objectives, or policies you need to follow to establish and follow these objectives. I just think the lead-in should be the same. It makes sense to me, but maybe it does just me.
Okay. Well, you know what? We'll put introduction and then purpose on each one of them. Well, that's no problem.
I don't want to create more work for you, but
I think the information is in there.
Well, information's there.
Yeah, I think Mayor Pro Tem's right. We got the information in there. We can change the headings and the nomenclature to make sure that we have consistency. We're fine with that.
I agree. It would be easier to review the four policies one after another if you're following a flow.
Yeah. It was difficult for me to kind of review them with jumping around there.
You know what? That's a good suggestion. We'll go ahead and do that.
Can I ask a question about page 54, just for example, like control of collusion?
Now, which page are you on?
Page 54, Part
54.
A.
Okay.
Collusion occurs when two or more employees work in conjunction to defraud the city. It says the city has an organizational structure, operational policies, and procedures to prevent that. We have an actual policy for collusion?
What we have done is we have segregation of duties, and then we have implemented certain procedures that ensure that no one person can take money or pay themselves. For example, all checks require, a couple of signatures. All bills are reviewed by the department head, the city manager, our city treasurer, and the city councils, and plus the finance director. So on any bill that goes out in the city, there's actually 5 levels of review of that bill before it's actually paid.
And I have heard you say that specific cover or wording over verifying, but my thought process is there a hyperlink to the actual policy or procedure for collusion? Just because it would also in hand work with the SEO audit. If we have an internal control policy or procedure number, then I'd be able to pull all those and even complete, and I know this is back to the SEO, which is not part of this, but if there were hyperlinks or an attachment to see that policy, because we have to in turn verify that these actually exist. Saying, we have an operational procedure, and we do, and we're using it,
right.
But is it written down? Is it anywhere that anyone can pull and verify that?
Well, for example, actually that's a good question. First of all, in terms of the segregation of duties, number one, we have the job descriptions for each position, which then segregate what each person's supposed to do. Okay. And then remember I told you there's 2 levels of policies. There's the overall policies that govern the basic policies and procedures at the higher level. Then there's the department policies.
Okay.
What you're talking about is the department policies, which we're in the process of preparing those right now.
Okay.
So some, for example, cash receipts, handling of cash would be a separate department policy that then is obviously linked to, the overall policy of the city. As I said, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable are areas that you would also have. Just an internal operating policy, so there's kind of 2 levels.
Okay. So we're in the process of creating all of this?
Right.
So we don't have necessarily each, not yet?
It's not written, but it's already...
It's already being enacted.
It's already enacted.
I'm seeing it. My concern is just it's part of our audit checklist and balances.
Sure,
to actually
absolutely.
verify that it's, policy number 609.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No.
I just want to make sure, because, if we had hyperlinks to these, it would just be, okay.
On page 73, under investment policies, on the introduction, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On financial reports, is there any need to put some kind of time frame in terms of quarterly, monthly, semi-annually, weekly?
State law requires that the city council review a investment report every quarter. And in fact, if you look on the agenda this time, the June 2016 report has been prepared by our city treasurer and our interim finance director, and it will be approved by the city council. We want to get to the point on our financial system, and we won't be there until we implement the new accounting and financial reporting system, where if somebody wants to report, we walk over and press a button, and it prints you an income and an expense statement, and then we press another button and it does the balance sheet. We want to get to the point at any given time that we can walk over there and press that button, and anybody can get the latest information. And so, but we won't be able to get that put in place until we get the new financial system in place and have that all.
Would it hurt to put quarterly first state requirements? Is that necessary, or is that just an assumption?
Well, it's state law. But if you want us to put quarterly, I have no problem.
I'm just saying, I'm looking at this, I'm supposed to represent the public, and I'm looking at this from a public point of view, not that the...
You know what? We'll just add...
I'm just saying, not that the public's going to read this document, but if someone so happened to have a few hours, and they were looking through that, they might want to say, well, they don't know state law.
You know what I'll do? I'm going to add quarterly. We have no problem with that. So... And I'd be disappointed if the public didn't want to really get into this thing. It excites me, and I know it excites Milana and Nancy Carroll, but...
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
On page 55, letter A, written confirmation of transaction for investment and wire transfers. The only thing I'm not seeing here, it says we are... potential for error and improprieties arising from telephone and electronic transactions. It does say that we have written communication that will be approved and authorized by supervisor. Do we have a storage for that data for written confirmed transactions and investment and wire transfers? Do we have an actual
We do.
storage?
We
How do we?
actually have, and this once again is segregation of duties. And Milana, we got it right here
Okay.
for your,
This is one of the forms that have been developed in the finance office whereby if we need to do a wire transfer to or from the accounts, this is filled out by the person who wants to do that. So if I say we need to move money into the LAIF, I'll fill this out. If money needs to be transferred into the payroll account to meet payroll, then not me, someone else fills this out. It has to be signed by the city manager, and it has to be signed then by the person who has authorization to make the transfer.
Okay.
I don't have authorization to make any transfers. I have no authorization to sign any checks.
That's the
So
segregation
I've
duty.
got the perfect outside of that. Once we have this filled out, then the bank transfers are made, documentation is printed from the website and attached to this form, and then it becomes part of the warrant register that Nancy then reviews.
Okay. And it's stored where?
It is stored electronically along with all of our other
In our server.
financial
Okay.
data.
And it's presented with the warrant
Right.
register.
Okay.
Right.
Again, just SCO thing, so I'm looking for the tie-in to what we're doing. Okay.
You know,
Certain
and that's an
certain
excellent
pieces
question. It really
are
is.
complete, as we've talked about. but
And
a lot
these are
of the
areas we had
policies,
problems.
We're
Okay.
working on it, so.
and I'm glad you're asking these questions because, I mean, these are the kinds of things that I think this committee is very useful in, is asking questions like, well, how do you do a wire transfer? And making sure that, you know, we're doing it with appropriate safeguards and controls. And we have Milana here that, you know, we can answer those questions for you.
On page 63, items number 10 and, 9 and 10 have been stricken.
That's because they're covered in another place. Yeah, okay, the reason 9 and 10 are struck is
No,
because
I'm
we
not-
added additional information at the top of, starting at the top of page 64 as it relates to fund balances.
I'm not going in that direction.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In other words, this is a new document. And so if that is being stricken and it was moved someplace else, either you would, if you're trying to make that point, you would say that that was transferred to someplace else, or you just renumber it, and number 11 would become number 10, and we'd never know that those two paragraphs existed.
Well,
Could we redo page 63 and start after 8, go to 9? Just drop 9 and 10, and then do that as an amendment?
no, absolutely. The only reason I struck them out is because the financial management policies were adopted in April of 2016. So if we were going to do any kind of amendments, what I tried to do was show by the strikeouts what the amendments are. Now, obviously, when this goes forward and approved, we would drop those off, but we certainly, in the interest of transparency, wanted to show you, you know, what was changed in terms of striking out. And then the italicized one, it really didn't come out very well on the copy, but if it's italicized, that's the new things that we've added. So in the case of fund balances, we've added much more verbiage as it relates to different kinds of fund balances. And by the way, the financial management policies, that's the only place where there's strikeouts in italicized, because that's the only policy you have. The rest of them are brand new.
And then on page 75 and 76, on 75 you have a heading, authorized financial dealers and institutions.
That's
Then you go-
investment policy.
And then you go over to page 76, and you have that heading repeated again.
Right. In fact, that was pointed out to us, so what we need to do on 76 is change it to authorized investments. But you're absolutely correct, that was an error.
Can I ask another question on page, are you done, Mr. Hollywell? I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yes.
Okay, 58, under independent audits. It says the city also participates in a number of federal and state-assisted grant programs which are subject to annual financial and compliancy audits.
Correct.
Can I get an example, other than our auditing firm that's here, that would show
Yes.
us completing annual financial and compliancy audits?
For example, the transit money, the TDA money and LTF money that comes through transit, there's a separate audit done every year on that.
Okay.
Community Development Block Grant money, which comes through HUD, through the county, has an audit done every year. OMB, what's the cutoff? Is it $500,000, right?
Qualify for CDBG
Right.
audits either. It's the same.
Because it's less than $500,000, right? Okay. Because we get less than $500,000, we don't even have to have CDBG, but there's what they call the federal single audit. So if you get more than $500,000 in a federal grant or something, there's actually a separate audit process. So generally speaking, if we get money from some other government entity, at some point they will be down to audit us.
Okay.
Gas tax is another one. They'll come down.
Thank you.
On page 70, item 5, which is part of the debt management policies, item 5 says, "City will maintain good communication regarding its financial condition." I assume that is good communication with the public.
Absolutely, and everybody in
Did you
bonds.
insert that?
Where's that?
So it's not assumed or understood. Item 5 just says, "The city will maintain good communication regarding its financial condition." After communication, would you just add with the public?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And council.
And council.
No, we're not going to talk
Well, I'm just,
Well,
No, I'm
if you,
Bond covenants and other
Okay, no problem.
cities about
I have one last question, and it had to do with deferred maintenance. Do we have a deferred maintenance policy on our fixed assets?
Well, that's one of the problems we have, is we're deferring maintenance on all our streets. So the streets continue to deteriorate, but deferred
We
maintenance,
don't have any program where we set aside money in a deferred maintenance fund
for depreciation, fixed assets.
well, in the ideal world,
I know we're hurting for money, but
right,
the governmental entities I've been associated with, we always had deferred maintenance funds, so that we were able to take care of our equipment and stuff when things would break down.
well, absolutely. In other government entities, especially larger ones, or those that are better funded, if you will, they create internal service funds. So these internal service funds, so for example, all the departments will pay into a vehicle maintenance and replacement fund. And so then when it's time to buy a fire truck, or it's time to buy a whatever it is, they've actually programmed it out so that there's enough money in there to do that. You also see, for example, separate funds set up for replacement of IT, communication, and those kinds. So those internal service funds are used to do exactly what you're talking about. I'm hoping at some point we'll get to the point where we set up those internal service funds, but
doesn't the workout plan address that? I think the workout plan talks about those kinds of funds that we have.
It does.
We have to work on.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem is absolutely correct. Sound financial practices would be to set up these internal service funds.
We're not there yet, but that's in our...
It's in the workout plan.
For example, we have a vehicle replacement fund, but there's no money in it. And so the workout plan is working out how do we get these funds back to a level that's going to what you're suggesting.
Okay.
So I think when we get the workout plan, you better bring that question up then.
Well, does anything need to be addressed in our policies that says we're working towards that, or is it covered? I didn't really see anything that covers it, but...
I think we have it covered somewhere, but I think...
Yeah, it's not that big a deal. To me, long-term, if you're trying to be fiscally sound and prudent, and whenever, things happen, and you you set a budget, if a large expenditure comes along, you hate to have that large expenditure disrupt your budget. You know, it's nice to have a fund that you can
Absolutely.
to replace whatever you need to replace. But I know we're not there. It's looking down the road. And I'm glad to hear that it's being discussed and being implemented in the future.
Can I ask a question on page 67, capital and other asset plans? It says that we will complete a 10 or 20-year master plan to support growth and replacement needs. Do we even have an old plan for this, or?
Well, a good example of that would be in the city council budgeted money for this, and this budget would be, we have money budgeted, for example, to do a sewer or wastewater master plan, where what you do is you look at the current situation, you project out your growth, and then you develop a capital improvements plan that provides for the construction of capital improvements over time. That's what they're talking about here. A good city will have a number of these master plans. So they'll have a streets plan, they'll have a water plan, they'll have a wastewater plan, they'll have a parks plan. They'll have, those are some of the ones they have. But
do cities normally farm that out to an independent consultant, or is that something we do in-house?
well, something like the wastewater plan would have to, because there's engineering involved.
They have to.
When you're sizing pipes and you're deciding lift stations and stuff like that, you really have to farm it out.
Okay.
You know, the issue that we just discussed about the replacement vehicle, we as a council investigated from the beginning, and we uncovered all of the problems that we have. The state controller's office contributed to that. We knew a lot of that. And we're still discovering issues that we don't know about. And when we discover those issues and we bring them forward and we start to work on solutions for them, we are not the ones who did it bad.
Oh, yeah.
But what I'm saying is there's a lot of opinions out there that because we're bringing these issues up, that no, we didn't have a plan. No, we don't have this. We don't have that. We did the audits wrong in the past. Whatever, we're trying to work on those and fix those. And that's sort of what you bring up when you ask, is that a plan done in-house? Yes, it should be.
Okay.
Are we doing it in-house yet? No, we're not, but we want to. And we're moving forward once we have a finance director and a senior accountant, a senior management, senior accountants, something like that. Then we'll have the staff to begin to do some of these things that we should have been doing for the last 20 years. But
I think if you looked at the breadth of what the city council has done over the last year and what's in the budget and the various things that are ongoing, the average citizen would be impressed how far the city has come in a year, and then how much of these kinds of things that every city ought to have are in process.
Yeah.
And I think the citizens are going to be well pleased because within a year, a lot of these things are going to be done, and we're going to move out of trying to clean up the past to really focusing on the future, and that's, I think, kind of where we want to be. But there's a lot happening in all these areas. Your cost allocation plan, we have a fee study going, we have an impact fee study going. All these things come together so that we have a viable city and what every other city should have. But a lot of this stuff's in process.
Do we currently have the sewer plans on paper, on electronic, or no record?
the what?
The sewer plans.
The sewer plans. In other words, if I went over here on, let's say, 6th Street, where would I find the plans for the sewers?
Design plans, is that what you're talking about? Blueprints,
The
that kind of
as-built?
thing?
The as-built, yes.
The city, I'd have to check on the sewer plant, but
Not
the city...
plans, not the plant, the plans.
The plans, right. The city's in the process of digitizing all of its infrastructure. The city council has already approved and budgeted having somebody do that, and so there's a lot of catch-up that has to be done. And I don't know if the sewer plan is we have it digitally, but, you know, certainly at some point, you know, we're gonna get there. And then whenever new infrastructure goes in, let's say a developer builds something, they have to turn over to us an electronic, in a format designated by the city, electronic as-built of that particular thing. So that then goes into this GIS database that the city is in the process of building. So once again, the city council had the foresight. They budgeted the money. They approved the hiring of a firm, and it's in process. It's happening. So
we also, correct me if I'm wrong, we have approved and budgeted for an appraisal of the sewer plant and the values of...
That's right. It's a GASB 34 report, which is required in order to have a clean audit opinion. What that is, evaluation of all general fund assets, streets, sidewalks.
Right.
Yeah.
And sewer and all those kinds of things. And that's we budgeted for that, and actually the RFP for that and a pavement management plan is on the agenda for tomorrow night to be approved by the city council. So anyway, I guess I think the citizens can feel good. The city council is moving forward, addressing all these areas, and there's a lot happening that's going to get us there. We're going to be in a great place in a year from now.
And does the sewer digitization also include the storm sewers?
One of the plans that every city should have is a storm drain or a storm water master plan. I remember I told you there's water and wastewater and parks and all that stuff. We don't have one, but that's one we ought to do. The other thing as it relates to that, there's federal requirements as it relates to stormwater, and the city council once again has approved the hiring of an individual to help us implement the federal stormwater program and requirements. So that's once again in process, and
That's your NPDES program.
that's exactly what it is. And the city council ultimately will have to approve that program and that report that relates to what you just said, the NPDES program. That's exactly what it is.
Can I ask a question on page 69, debt management? It says, California currently has no constitutional or statutory debt limit for municipalities. Therefore, city council, city manager, and other staff must use debt in a wise and judicious manner. Do we not have a debt cap for the city? There's no cap or regulation?
There's no cap under California law. Some states have a cap. There is none. But however, the good news is the city has no wastewater or utility debt, nor does it have any general fund debt.
Okay.
The only debt that you're carrying is CFD debt. There's no debt in any other place.
Oh, okay.
So that's the one bright, if there's a bright spot, that's it.
Okay.
No, actually it is. I mean, I've seen cities so burdened with debt that they can't do anything because they're paying principal and interest payments, you know.
In your personal, oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
In your personal experience, have you seen other cities that you've worked with in the past have any type of regulation or cap on the amount of debt that they can incur?
Well, I mean, when I started early in my career, I was city manager in Utah. There is a cap based on property tax value, but that's a state thing. It's out of state. California doesn't have one, but some states do.
Do some cities choose to impose any type of cap like that?
The city council could if they wanted to.
Okay.
If that was their...
I'm just curious. Okay.
Yeah, no, the city council could do it
Okay.
by policy.
I'm sorry, Mayor Lara.
Richard, on page 71, under our budget adoption procedures, if the Standing Finance Committee would like, I think that one of the things we wanted to do was to have the Finance Committee review the budget. Would we insert them maybe maybe item 4 would be a budget work meeting with the Finance and Audit Committee as part of the budget preparation?
Oh, it's under the budget work meetings?
I'm sorry, yeah, budget adoption procedures on page 71, maybe adding item 4.
Okay, how about if we say this, the Finance and Audit Committee and the city council will hold one or more public
There you
budget
go.
work meetings.
Perfect.
I mean, and we did bring that to you, and I firmly believe we ought to do that, but that's a good suggestion. We'll
Would it
go
be-
ahead and add that language in there.
Would it be wise to do that at a step maybe earlier than that?
Well, I think in the ideal world, when we have more time, because we did the budget in 29 days, and I think in the ideal world, what we would do is we would do a budget presentation. You do it to the city council first, and then we would do a budget presentation here, and then you would give the committee time to study it, and then you would come back and hold your workshops. So, but we can do that next year because we'll start early and we'll have enough time and we'll have our new financial system in place, so.
We'll have good numbers.
We're going to have
Yeah.
great, I promise you, this next year, we're going to have great numbers.
Valid
No.
numbers.
Things that you can believe in.
Yes.
Okay, I think this is my last one. Page 70, it's after number 6. The Finance Department will report on an annual basis or whenever staff propose to issue new debt or other long-term debt obligations. Is the city itself allowed to enter into long-term debt without council approval, or they must receive council? What's the process for long-term debt obligations?
The council has to approve it.
So you say, we have a proposition, we need this much, or we need to do this, and then council approves or doesn't approve entering into that long-term debt obligation?
Yeah, I think what this is saying is,
Okay.
what they need to report to the city council early on.
Like a foreshadow or forecast, if we
You
see.
know, when you do the budget, if you plan on issuing debt, that should be disclosed to the city council if in fact you're planning on doing that, and I think that's what,
And we have a policy in place where no debt could be issued without the council.
yes, and it's state law.
Okay,
The council has to vote on the debt resolutions and everything.
okay,
That's a good question.
I think I'm done. Thank you very much.
Hey, well, thank you. I mean, I think these have been good questions. It's been a good discussion. Anybody else?
Any other questions? We good?
We are, but I also want to thank you guys for looking
Right.
into this and really doing the homework on it, 'cause I try to do it. I didn't catch half the things.
After the SEO, after you read over and over and over and over again, and you start seeing the violations,
Right.
then you see how the policies tie in, and it
Right.
starts to click, oh, there's a problem, or, yeah.
I don't know, does the committee feel comfortable with the changes you've talked about, recommending or voting to approve? I don't know. I don't want to rush anybody.
I think if you brought back the...
Or if you want us to bring in back changes next time, we can do that.
And then we can just get it, we can go get to council.
I have just a couple of questions, if I
Okay.
could, please. On page 85, where you make a reference to disposal of fixed assets. Now, this particular paragraph covers, it talks about land and buildings and other fixed assets of a value of over $5,000 must have city council approval. You can't piecemeal that, right? So, in other words, if you have multiple assets, but they're under $5,000, but if you string them together and you're going to dispose of them, is there any piecemealing of this?
Well, no, I don't think there's, no, I think that, typically, you're disposing, the fixed assets you're disposing of is things like vehicles and,
Can you,
Maybe outdated
Nancy, can you give a,
computers and-
outdated computers, that'd be a good example.
Right.
is there an example of where you would think there could be a violation
Well,
there, that I could, so I can understand?
I believe, at least in the past, sometimes, some of the fixed assets, probably by the time they were gathered together, were over $5,000, but I don't think in the past we did city council approval, so we wouldn't break them apart and let them slip through.
No,
Okay.
we're not going to do anything without
Okay.
transparency.
Sometimes I look at this exactly what you were talking about, which is where we may have done missteps in the past and making
Right.
sure that this is bulletproof for that process.
Sure, yeah.
So that was why I wondered, because I did know that we, in the past, we did get rid of computers and we did things like that, and they were not done through city council.
Should we not say something then, no one item instead of 5,000?
So I just want to make sure we don't do it again,
What
that's all.
about the sentence that says, if it is determined that the fixed asset sold as a unit has a value less than 5,000? So it's...
Where's that now? I'm sorry. I
The next
guess I should know my own policy.
Well, you wrote a lot.
Nancy, you're asking like
It's page
multiple
85.
computers within a given year are
We
disposed of,
we
and the
just-
aggregate of that is more than 5,000? You think that circumvents?
We would just buy new ones and
Well, computers are a good
Those are
example.
things
Sometimes
that-
what you do is you buy a new computer, and then as part of that purchase, you swap out, you surplus or you swap out
The core or whatever.
the old one.
You swap new for old.
See, if you go to 3C, these are ways you can dispose of fixed assets. 3C is traded in or to reduce the purchase price of new equipment for a fixed
Okay.
asset. So let's say you had an old cop car and you're buying a new cop car,
You trade it in.
and so you trade it in.
Got it.
And sometimes you do that with computers or
I
I
think
just want to
that,
make sure it's robust enough, because I don't think we were as cautious as we are now.
I think that the
Still allows it. I mean, it says unit, 5,000, you can have 5 computers, each one a unit. They're all $2,500 together, they're like 10 grand.
Well, computers are probably not
All good.
the best example, because they go down in value and they don't,
Quick, yeah.
They're
no
worth
computer
$100.
by itself is
At
going
the
to be
end.
worth over
Yeah.
$5,000. But if you're the police department and you're getting rid of 5 computers and 2 cop cars, and it comes together and it amounts to, $15,000 or $20,000,
Each unit.
But
are
each
we
one was
doing
under
an approved
that 5 mark.
process for getting rid of it? That's all.
I think that the point that they're trying to make is that you may have a list that comes up over $5,000, but the thing is, it is a list. You have to look at what the unit cost of the units that are on that list. And that's what this paragraph is in here.
Are we documenting that and keeping a record of any disposed
I
items?
don't know, they haven't done it since, we haven't
No, but they
disposed of
have,
anything.
they
have
do
we?
come to council.
Process now, yes, we'll be keeping track of all of it.
But whenever
Spoken like
equipment
that.
is...
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Melania.
She said they have a policy now for tracking.
If we,
Right. We've just recently identified some assets for disposal. Some of them might have some value, some don't. And we have different means of getting those sold. That includes the police vehicles, which generally you can't trade in, but occasionally, and what's happening is we have them specifically identified through a document so that I know which one it was, so that potentially, if we had a fixed asset listing to start with, I'd know which one we sold, and then I'd also then have verification of the amount that we sold it for and who we sold it to, so we'd have that record permanently.
Good,
So-
thank you.
fixed assets should be reported in the general ledger.
Right.
And I know we don't have all of our fixed assets as far as land and building and streets, but vehicles as a whole also, we have not been depreciating or evaluated our fixed assets?
Only if it's part of the enterprise funds. So only the sewer and only transit. And with transit, we technically don't own those assets because they were purchased with RCTC funding, so there's a sharing that we go through with them. So if we were going to get rid of any of the transit vehicles or transit equipment that was purchased with transit funding, we'd have to get approval from RCTC before we could dispose of those.
Items that we do have that aren't like RCTC, are we losing the tax advantage to
There's no
dropping this down to
tax.
fair market?
There's no tax for a city.
There's no government, or there's no tax?
The only, typically, in the audit report, they do depreciate general fund fixed assets, but for the most part, when you buy a fixed asset in the general fund, you pay cash at the beginning, and then when the asset is used up, you sell it.
Okay,
There is no tax advantage because the city doesn't pay taxes.
on it.
So basically, depreciation, which is used primarily in the enterprise funds, is simply a bookkeeping kind of thing to let you know what the current value of your assets are versus something that you might need for taxes or for something that, if you're in a private sector, first in, first out, and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's important when you can, because that expense affects your bottom line and your tax. But government, it's different. But
Is that ever used then, if we're only using it for the purposes of tracking value, is that value ever used for loans or funding or assessments for the city in any way? Valuation of
if you're
assets that
issuing
we have?
bonds or something, sometimes the bond people will look at, the value of your assets. But in a government entity, for example, let's say a city were to default on a bond or something, well, there's really not a whole lot that somebody can come in and repossess. I mean, you can't repossess a street. I guess maybe you could repossess City Hall. Never seen that done, but I mean, so it's really not that important. In the enterprise funds, and I don't mean to get in the weeds here, but the importance of depreciation tells you how much cash along with your cash on hand for capital projects. So that's the reason why it's important in the enterprise fund, but it doesn't really affect.
Other
And I'm getting way
Sorry,
too
I wanted to know. I'm sorry.
I mean,
Okay.
Are we at a point where we can give Mr. Warren direction, because we're past ready to talk?
I think I'm done.
Are we good?
He's going to come back with...
We'll bring the final ones back next time. Does that work for everybody?
Just the changes that you're making, and then we can take...
Just the pages? Or?
Yeah.
Just the pages. Yeah, the pages and...
Okay. Hey, by the way, this has been a good discussion. I appreciate everybody being so conscientious and asking, the hard questions, and I know the council appreciates it. That shows you the value of this committee, so thank you very much. Call me anytime if you have any questions. I'll just refer you to Milana. You know how it rolls downhill?
That's right.
Milana and I work really well together. We have a meeting every day, and
That's good.
finance,
Thank you very much.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, I don't have, anybody got a calendar in front of them for next meeting date?
Meet on the 11th?
No, we only
We have a workshop on the 11th.
No, I mean, is it September?
September 12th.
12th.
If the first Monday is Labor Day, that's the 5th. So if we put it for the Monday after that, that would be the 12th.
The 12th.
But I just put it on there for discussion, for if anybody wanted to
Want to meet on Labor Day?
meet any earlier.
No.
No.
with the 12th.
You're a little shaky there.
No. I want to barbecue.
Okay, so our next meeting date will be Monday, September 12th at 6 p.m.
September 12th?
Well, we have the workshop on August 11th.
August 11th.
Okay, we got one more. Okay, any,
What's the objective on the workshop on the 11th? I mean, we're all getting together to, just a...
That's our
And
workout
the
plan.
Economic
There
Committee
is a plan out there, and we're going to review it?
It's a workshop.
Where do we get...
with council and other committees, right?
Oh, we don't have
We
it.
sent,
it's online.
well, and we emailed it to everybody. Did everybody not get it?
Probably just came, did it just come today? Because I didn't.
No, it's like a month.
Yeah, I actually contacted the deputy because I needed a date. I needed to know for my calendar purpose.
You know what, we'll get with her tomorrow and have it resent,
Okay.
so that you have it.
And this one you really do need to do your homework, because there's big issues that are affect the city.
So you've already sent out the packets for us to review prior to this?
The workout plan has been sent out, but we'll send it again.
Okay.
And it's on the website.
It's on the
Yeah, it's on the
website.
website
Oh, I'll just
also.
pull it out of the website. That's fine. Okay.
Okay, so we have a, hi, John.
Hi. So if the city managers ask us to take and review something and give them, so he can go back to council, are we going to put him off 2 months?
No.
What was that again?
Because you're not having a meeting in August, right?
Oh, I see what he's saying.
Well, we just had our,
This is the August meeting.
Okay.
This is the first, right?
so our next meeting's in September, and you'll bring it back to us September 12th. Yeah.
Okay, I'm a month behind then.
Just one day.
That's okay.
Just one day.
Missed it by...
Yesterday.
Okay, and then potential agenda items for our next meeting.
we tabled an item that we need to add back.
Yeah. We tabled back the...
Investment policy.
Yeah.
The investment policy.
CMTA.
So we have that. And then we have city manager bringing back the corrections.
The updates of the policies, yes.
We can't approve it with changes, with those changes, we have to see it again? Is that how it works? I'm just asking.
Which?
The city
Yeah,
managers?
normally what
Is that normally? Okay. Okay.
We'll bring an update of the checklist. And, are you going to do a staff report on the CFD escalator?
Now, are we doing a CFD
I don't think
stuff?
It
you
might
need
be
to
a
decide
little
that
early.
today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we could
No.
put that off till the one after.
I emailed you guys the links to the,
Only because we have that, we have the 11th meeting. That one.
Work sustainable.
Okay, so an update on the checklist modifications? Anything else?
Tell her that there'll be an SEO update.
Pardon?
There'll be an SEO update.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Gavel us.
We will adjourn our meeting at 8:08.